Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. My name is Dan and I'm here to bring you another FPL video. So in this one I'm going to be breaking down my game week 1 points as well as 2 sections at the end of the video. The first one being 5 key observations I made across watching the games this weekend and 5 overall FPL lessons I think that we can all learn from and just think about going ahead into this new season. So if you are new around here, please consider subscribing to the channel if you enjoy the content, and likewise for liking the video. So let's jump into the points scored by my team this week. Overall, I'm very happy with scoring 66 points. I think at the beginning of the drafting phase and really towards the end of it, if you would have told me that I would have scored this level of points, I would have taken it. I am a little bit disappointed in some of the decisions I made last minute, really. Most notably on Zinchenko and Cancelo. Really, I could have easily swapped Robertson and Walker around to those two, and would have definitely been up on points overall. But still, 66 points is very respectable. 2.1 million in terms of rank, and pretty much going into game week 2 without really having to make too many transfers. I think, to be honest, overall the team is solid enough to go into it without any. Mason Mount, I definitely feel, was a disappointment from watching Chelsea versus Everton. He really wasn't involved in much as I thought he would be, to be honest. Yeah, I mean, overall, as I say, there's just certain choices there that just worked in my favour as well, of course. So Haaland was Kane in one of the drafts before, scoring an extra 11 points with the brace and 3 bonus coming in. And he looks fantastic, to be honest. I think against West Ham away, it's a tricky fixture. Although it's the beginning of the season, I think he looked great. So yeah, overall, very happy with the output of the team. So as I mentioned at in the introduction, I have got a couple of sections talking about some kind of notes and maybe some observations, really is the best word to put it, for some of the games across the weekend. Now, this doesn't feature all of the teams or all of the games. I did sort of start making notes prior to today's games. So really, it's we can kind of discuss those afterwards as some extra points. But the first one is Andreas Pereira, looking at that 4.5 million mark. He's looking fantastic. He was pretty much on all set pieces and was playing in a very advanced role for Fulham. Overall, the team looked great. Him and Mitrovic were linking up, and there was definitely more, potential for him to get some assists and attacking returns. So I think as their fixtures start to get a little bit better against some of the weaker opposition in the league, I think definitely he's one to consider bringing in. He pretty much behaved, in my opinion, like a 5.56 million midfielder in terms of what he does. So I think he's been very underpriced and fantastic value. I think, of course, mentioning Mitrovic as well with that brace against Liverpool, nobody really saw that coming. And pretty much, I think, again, he can easily become that kind of forward role enabler in drafts at some point in the future. Potentially on a wild card, he becomes a cheaper option for us to be able to extend out our money further across the rest of the team. So I think he looks like great value so far as well. Moving on to point number 2, I think Arsenal, really, they could have conceded multiple goals. Palace got in behind pretty much, multiple times. I think Eze had a clear opportunity on goal, which Ramsdale came to the rescue for. And I think really when you look at Zinchenko as an isolated pick, scoring those 12 points, he wouldn't have scored, of course, the 3 bonus and the extra clean sheet points if they would have conceded. So I think he's, at the time of recording, I think at the moment he is the highest or most transferred in player. I would say just be careful on reacting instantly to that, because ultimately, yeah, we're not sure on what's going to happen over the next few weeks. I still think he's a wait and see. Although it was a great assist, he was much more attacking than I expected him to be. As mentioned in previous videos, I actually preferred Gabriel as a 5 million option over Zinchenko on one of my drafts. So third point, Mo Salah, of course, the FPL greatest of all time. I mean, this guy he's 6 years in a row now where he's pretty much scored on his on the opening fixture. And pulled in another double-digit haul. So 24 points overall with the captaincy armband on him, I think was fantastic. Of course, notably, what the most important thing I think to take away from that game, though, is we already know what Mo Salah's capable of. It's the fact that Darwin Núñez was the changing factor and the catalyst, really, for giving Mo Salah the opportunity to score the goal and also to get that assist as well. Now, I think undoubtedly he's going to be considered more and more of a threat as the Premier League moves on. I think Jurgen Klopp cannot ignore the fact that this guy looks like he's seamlessly fit in terms of a Liverpool outfit. And I think, yes, it was Fulham, so it is potentially a weaker opposition. He may struggle against obviously the top tier teams, let's say, but I think he's going to be one that we really need to consider. I think overall, if you go back to the kind of 3 Liverpool conversation of Trent, Robertson, Diaz, Nunez, for me at the moment it is pretty much Trent, Mo and Nunez that seem to be the 3 front runners for Liverpool should we want to go down that road. I do still think though, that being said, that Trent and Robbo as a double up do still look strong long term. Robertson had an effort on goal, I believe, saved quite early on. He was in the box a lot more than Trent. Trent certainly was the more creative out of the 2 of them, but Robbo seems to be much more involved in inside the box. And again, I still think the double up will return long term. Moving on to point number 4 with Chelsea, I think they were a lot stronger defensively than I expected them to look overall. I think Koulibaly looked great throughout the whole game. Definitely see Cucurella as well, although he only featured for a cameo of 15 minutes, managed to get himself a booking as well. I think he could potentially be a standout option if he gets solid minutes from game week 3 onwards. I think as an option to, as opposed to Reece James for that 1 million cheaper, I think he could definitely come in. And I have seen some drafts where managers have doubled up already on James and Cucurella. So I think potential returns there could be massive as well. And finally, moving on to point number 5, out of all the 8 million midfielders, it was actually Kulusevski that was the surprise standout pick. So a couple of managers, of course, I think it was about 5.5%, 6% ownership on him that went with him, scoring a handsome 13 points and well deserved. And I do anticipate now, though, that there potentially could be some rotation with Richarlison being available again from game week 2, but he's definitely on the watch list. I think adding to that as well in terms of Spurs' wing-back system with Conte, they look important. Sessegnon got most of the minutes in terms of this game. Doesn't mean that he's necessarily going to be nailed on. So I think really from a transfer perspective, I would say again, wait and see. Patience is key really in this game. It is the name of the game in FPL. Just wait for some more solid, I guess, information and data where we can definitely be sure that certain individuals are going to get more minutes than others. And I think, they look like a team, again, that are on the up and looking fantastic. Overall as well from today's games, I would say that although they're not on this list here, obviously United really kind of looking very, very disappointing today. Brighton were a threat pretty much for 60 minutes, 70 minutes of the game. In fact, even pretty much you could argue the whole 90 minutes. They didn't look very, very good defensively. I think Martinez and Maguire as a pair, they obviously need some time to build up a relationship. I mean, this is Danny Welbeck that we're talking about. He's not a bad player. He's experienced in the Premier League, but he tore them apart. Now, I can't imagine if that was Erling Haaland or Nunez, to be honest, in between those two, because I don't see how at the moment they're going to defensively deal with it. So I think with there's too many question marks again on Manchester United in terms of assets. I think Brighton overall as a team looked a really, really solid outfit. I think they looked great today. There was potential threat coming from multiple individuals. I think Trossard had a good game. Obviously, Gross scoring the brace as well. So an absolute great performance by them. And of course, City and West Ham. I think West Ham just looked a little bit lost in terms of the game overall. They only really came into the game really in the second half. You could argue that they were, sort of putting, a few more passes together. I think it was, they were only in double digits really in terms of completed passes across the whole first half. City were just an absolute dominant force. And I think Erling Haaland has proven to everybody that tossed that coin and went for him over Kane, has proved why you need to think about him and consider him. If you haven't already banked in that transfer from Kane to Haaland against Bournemouth in game week 2, I think he's proved already enough that he is definitely looking like the most likely captaincy option moving into that game week. So overall, like I say, I didn't put obviously all of the observations here. They were just some things that I noticed or some key takeaways from it in terms of either players or an overall team output perspective. So hopefully this is useful to you. And then of course, as mentioned again in the introduction, I've also got another section now with the 5 FPL lessons. So I could have really done this as a whole separate video, to be honest, but I wanted to kind of just touch base on it because I think it's really important. In terms of the game overall, we'll jump in as number 3 really. I've gone out of order, but essentially FPL is a marathon and not a sprint. You're not supposed to get 100 points every single week. If you did that, then you would be winning the game by an absolute country mile. It's definitely about long-term averages rather than the short-term picks. So again, for number 1, don't overreact to players that have scored badly in your squad. Points should be looked at as that average over that longer period. So don't have a look in isolation of their week by week performance. You know, Pedro Neto, for example, some of the flair and some of the confidence that he had in that Wolves Leeds game looks great. It doesn't constitute though to FPL points yet, but it doesn't mean necessarily we should knee jerk him out just because he hasn't scored or given us any returns. Same for Bailey on that note, as well as that kind of cheaper option. Villa didn't obviously look at it with the Bournemouth fixture, but it doesn't mean that in the next few weeks that value isn't there in terms of that initial thinking. So again, that moves quickly into kind of point number 2 really, and that's about staying true to the reasons why you picked a player in the first place. If you go and pick Bailey and then all of a sudden you're transferring out straight away or considering -4s because you think you've made a mistake, just own the mistake for a couple of weeks. What you tend to find is if you're taking -8s, -12s, you end up having to play much more catch up, and you'll never ever be able to kind of recover from that initial decision making. So just stay calm and essentially just look for the long term in terms of your transfers. So skipping number 3, as we've already mentioned that, and going into number 4, just remember it's only a game and it should be enjoyed. So for my personal outlook on it is that I love football. It's my favourite sport. I consume so much content regarding football. I watch the games live. I've got a fortunate enough position in life or in terms of work where I can enjoy the weekend football. And essentially, it's just a complementary addition, really, to watching those matches. So from a neutral perspective, it makes games much more interesting to watch. And that's why I say just remember it should be enjoyed and it shouldn't be something that you stress too much over. And finally, I have seen other content creators mention this, but I really do think it's very, very important. Mental health awareness is probably it should be number 1 on this list, really, if we were ranking them, because if the game is affecting you negatively, even this early on, based on your results, then just come back to it another time. Drop the game, leave it for a couple of weeks, and pretty much you never know, your team may actually end up scoring you more points over that time that you drop the game for than if you was to try and tinker and make transfers overall. So sometimes it's better to just take that break, leave it if it's causing you problems, whether it's your personal life or something else that's affecting you. You don't need, again, a game that's designed to be enjoyed to affect you negatively. So I hope everyone else's game week was pretty much as successful as mine. I'm very, very happy with those 66 points, and I hope that you guys have also taken some positives from this week. As I say, I'll definitely be looking at doing another team selection video and potential transfer options, but I'm pretty set already. I think that I'm going to be carrying that over into game week 3 as things stand. So yeah, if you're new around here, as mentioned at the beginning of the video, please do consider subscribing to the channel. It really helps me out. Plenty of season content coming your way. Thanks also to everybody that tuned in to the deadline live stream. It was, of course, a little bit kind of delayed in terms of me speaking, but first of many, I'm sure, and they will only get better from here on in. So again, thanks for all the support so far. Really appreciate you guys tuning in, and I'll see you in the next one.